On the Shortness of Life. On the Shortness of Life is a philosophical work by Seneca in which he discusses the shortness of life and how to adapt to this reality. Seneca argues that people often feel anxious and confused when they realize the transient nature of time. However, he advocates that we should accept this fact and derive wisdom and happiness from it. Lucius Annius Seneca, 4 BC 65 AD, was an ancient Roman Stoic philosopher, playwright, and statesman, also known as Seneca the Younger. Seneca was born in the Spanish province of the Roman Empire and grew up in Rome, where he studied rhetoric and philosophy. His father, Seneca the Elder, was a well-known writer and rhetorician in ancient Rome. He was exiled to Corsica by Emperor Claudius I in 41 AD, but was called back to Rome in 49 AD to serve as Nero's tutor, and in 55 AD, when Nero ascended the throne, he appointed Seneca as an advisor to Nero. In 62 AD, he retired from politics and devoted himself to writing, but in 65 AD, he was falsely accused of participating in the Pisonian conspiracy, and was sentenced to death by Nero for mutiny and conspiracy, and later died by suicide. Seneca was an important philosophical figure in the Roman Empire, especially famous for his philosophical writings and tragedies, and his works had a profound influence on later generations. He was known as the most interesting Stoic in the world for his accessible and quotable writings. Seneca's contribution to the Stoic philosophy, which advocates moral and intellectual advancement and the maintenance of spiritual peace, and his tragic writings, which are distinctly different from his philosophical works, touch on almost all areas that could be the subject of study. The philosophical essays he wrote during his period of seclusion, including On the Shortness of Life, On Happiness, and On Peace of Soul, have had a profound and lasting influence on later generations, and the aphorisms in them have been widely used to this day. In On the Shortness of Life, Seneca put forward some important ideas and suggestions. He emphasized the preciousness of time and warned against wasting it on meaningless things. He believed that people should focus on the pursuit of wisdom, the development of character, and the establishment of deep relationships with others, rather than on the pursuit of vanity. The following is an excerpt from Seneca's letter to Paulinus on the shortness of life. Most people, O Paulinus, complain of the fickleness of nature, because life is short, and the shortness with which it is endowed is so fleeting that all but a very few live their lives before they can begin to live them. It is not only the mediocre and the unthinking of the masses who lament this commonplace disease, as they say, but also those of great renown who complain of the same feeling, and hence the words of the greatest of the fathers of medicine, life is short, but art is long. Even Aristotle had a rant about this, which was highly unbecoming of a wise man. He blamed nature for favoring animals so much that they live 5 or 10 cycles of life, while limiting human life to a very short period of time, even though he was born for so many great achievements. Life is not short, but we waste it too much. A life is long enough to produce great things if we devote ourselves to it. However, it is only when we are so careless and wasteful, and so absorbed in trivialities, that we reach the ultimate point of no return, that we come to our senses. Without realizing it, time passes and life is gone. Therefore, the actual life given to us is not short, it is our own making. God's gift is not thin, it is we will be wasted. This is just like the son of a loser who throws away his fortune in a single stroke, and in a few moments it is dissipated. If we entrust the management of our wealth to someone who is good at what he does, we can increase the value of our wealth, even if it is not much. Therefore, if we can make proper arrangements, our lives can be prolonged. Why should we blame Mother Nature? She has done her best. Life, if used well, is long enough. However, there are those who are insatiable in their greed, there are those who are inactive, there are those who are drunken, there are those who are lazy, and there are those who are always looking up to others because of their political ambitions. Some people are always looking up to others because of political ambitions, the result is exhausted. Some people in business to make a fortune, but profit is the only thing. Some people are keen on poor military, always harming others, or always anxious, lest the great misfortune, and thus suffering, Some people rack their brains, willing to serve the big man, and the effort is not pleasing to the eye. A lot of people or other people's wealth, or complain about their own poverty, have no time to care about other people. Many have no pursuit, but go with the flow, and are restless and never satisfied. There are those who live their lives without purpose, and while they yawn and yawn, death comes unawares. I have no doubt at this point that the classic words of the greatest poet of all time are true: the life we really live is only a small part of the life we have. Indeed, the rest is not life, but merely time. Evil hijacks people, attacking them from all sides, so that they can no longer get up and open their eyes to recognize the truth, but can only bow down and let the fire of desire burn, and lose themselves forever. Even if they are lucky enough to get a little peace, they are still tossing and turning, and it is hard for them to get rid of the evil thoughts and return to peace, just like the water in the deep sea still churning even after a storm has ravaged it. Do you think I am talking about recognized evil people? Look at the lucky ones who are sought after by all, and suffocated by the sweet words of blessing. How many are burdened with wealth? How many of them talk so much, and spend their days in the display of their gifts and talents? How many have been so consumed with pleasure that they have pined and withered away? And how many of them are caught up in the surroundings of their clients and cannot help themselves? In short, looking at all these people, from the common man to the high and mighty, this one asks for legal aid, that one offers help, this one is tried, that one defends him, and the other one passes judgment. No one makes a claim on his own behalf, each one dissipates his energies on behalf of the other. Ask the famous people and you will find that they all have this terrible distinctive feature: A wants to please B, B wants to please C, and nobody cares for himself. Then there are those who get angry. They complain that their bosses don't care about them, because when they want to be listened to, they are too busy to do so. But how can a person complain about the arrogance of others when he or she is always too busy to take care of himself or herself? However, no matter who you are, the big man will sometimes look at you, and even with an overbearing expression, he will still listen to you and allow you to walk alongside him. But you have never given yourself the time of day to listen to yourself. Since you have shown that it is not because you look to others for companionship, but because you cannot tolerate being your own companion, you have no reason to think that others should be concerned about you. Even if the philosophers had come to consider this topic, they would have been surprised at the muddiness of the human mind. People don't let others take their property. The slightest dispute over land boundaries can cause them to take up stones and weapons in a heartbeat, and yet they can let others take their lives. Ahem, they even hire people to take control of their lives themselves. You'll notice that no one wants to share their money, but each of us divides our lives. People are penny-wise and pound-foolish when it comes to defending their possessions, but generous when it comes to spending time that they should be stingy with. Therefore, I will take hold of an ancestor and say to him, I see that you are old, nearly 100 years old, or more than 100 years old. Come, give us an inventory of your life. Calculate how much time you have spent in wrangling with your creditors, in mingling with your mistresses, in making friends with the nobility, in making love with your gatekeepers, in quarreling with your wife, in punishing your slaves, in running about the city in the discharge of your social obligations, and counting the time you have spent in sickness, and the time that has passed by without doing anything, and you will find that the time you have has been much less than you had originally estimated. Think back to when there has been a fixed goal, according to their own plans for the days, only a few days, when to do whatever you want to do, when the expression of natural, when the mind is not distracted. So long life has achieved what achievements, do not realize how many people have intruded into your life. No reason for the grief, stupid playfulness, greed, the outside world of the temptation to make you lose how many of life's good times, but little left. You will die too soon. Why is this so? You live as if you are destined to live forever, you never feel vulnerable, you are oblivious to the passing of time, and you squander it as if it will come and go, when in fact, the day you pay for someone or something else is probably the day you will die. When you're afraid, you know you're going to die. When you're greedy, you seem to live forever. You will hear a lot of people say, when I'm 50, I'll retire and relax, when I'm 60, I'll cancel all my business trips. But who can guarantee that you will live that long? Who can guarantee that you will live the life you set for yourself? Don't you feel ashamed when you are left with nothing but scraps of food, when you can't spend your time on anything else before you start to think about it? It's too late to start living when your life is about to end. How foolish it is to forget that we all have to die, and to put off all those wise plans until we are 50 or 60 years old, and to try to begin to live at an age when very few people will live. You will find that many high and mighty men have declared that they longed for leisure, that they appreciated it, and that they thought a life of leisure was more valuable than their own honor. Sometimes they longed to get out of their high places in peace, for even without outside attacks and disturbances, their good fortune would have vanished in a few moments. Augustus the Great, who was worshipped as a god, received more favors from the gods than anyone else, and yet he constantly prayed for a break from his duties and a moment's rest. His constant theme was the desire for leisure. He used to condone his labors with words of consolation, which, though false, were very agreeable. He said that one day he would live to please himself. After a letter to the Senate, in which he promised that his retirement would not be without dignity, nor inconsistent with his former glory, I read, "But it is more to be remembered that promises must not be made, but must be carried out. But the delightful reality is still far off, so I will be glad and happy to speak of my desire for the good times, and enjoy that pleasure in advance." Leisure was so precious to him that he organized spiritual meals before he could actually enjoy it. A man like him, who thought that he alone could dominate everything and determine the well-being of the people and the state, would be overjoyed at the thought of one day putting his honor aside. However, he knew from personal experience how much sweat he had to put into the honor of being admired by the four directions, and how many hidden anxieties he had to face. He had to fight against his own countrymen, then against his colleagues, and finally against his own family, resulting in a sea of bloodshed. He fought in Macedonia, Sicily, Egypt, Syria, Asia, and almost every country in the world, and when his armies grew tired of the bloodshed in Rome, he opened fire on the enemy abroad. While he was pacifying the Alps and subduing the enemies who had risen in the middle of his peaceful empire, and while he was extending his frontiers along the Rhine, Euphrates, and Danube, in Rome itself, Molinar, Scipio, Ripida, Agnatius, and others were foddering their troops against him. While he had not yet escaped from their designs, his daughter, and all the noble youths around him who had sworn allegiance to her through adultery, as well as Aeolus and the second dreadful woman who had joined forces with Antony, terrified him in his old age. He got rid of all these abscesses and his right-hand men, but new ones immediately took their place, as if an excess of blood had to break out somewhere. So he longed for leisure, and looked forward to and imagined that he might be relieved from his troubles. The nations prayed to him, and he prayed for nothing more. When you are running around for someone or something else, it may be the last moment of your life. The parts we don't live can't be considered a life, but at best a period of time. Evil swirls around us and prevents us from being active, from seeing the truth, and makes us puppets of our desires. No one is busy just for himself, everyone's time is spent on others. Some people may criticize their bosses for disrespecting their employees, thinking that they don't even look at them when they need someone to pay attention to them. But if a person can't even take care of himself, who is he to complain about the arrogance of others? No one wants to share their wealth with others, but many people don't care if their lives are shared. Where does the problem begin? You think you can live forever, but you don't realize that you are actually weak and fragile. Complaining won't change you, and it won't change anyone else. You may live to be 1,000 years old, but what's the difference between 1,000 years and an instant? As long as your bad habits are still there, any amount of time given to you will be wasted. People who are really busy should be busy with life, and life is the most difficult skill to master. If you want to learn other skills, you will not be afraid to find a teacher. The person who organizes a sports competition, once he or she has made every effort to obtain the right to hold the competition, says, "Can the competition be over soon?" People often rush through their lives, expecting the future to come soon, but feeling overwhelmed by the present. On the other hand, those who understand their own needs and plan each day as if it were their last will not think about the future or worry about it. The goddess of fortune can do whatever she wants, but those who know how to live their lives will still be able to live a stable and proper life. Both parties, the one who takes up other people's time and the one who is taken up, only notice what they have done with their time, but they do not care about the time itself. Time is the most precious thing in the world, but people always take it lightly because it is invisible and easy to be ignored, and is squandered as if it were free. People have always cared only about pensions and benefits, and in order to receive them, they are willing to work at the beck and call of others. But when these people get sick, they want to get down on their knees and beg the doctor for help, even if it means losing all their money to stay alive. The difference between the first and second reactions of these people is enormous. In mortal life, the best days are the first to go. These people, the ones who think they have a vision, have spent their entire lives preparing for life. These people make plans that are tied to the distant future, but procrastination is the biggest waste of life. Even if you seize the moment, time will still slip away, and you have to utilize your time well in order to fight against the flying time. The present is fleeting, the future is unpredictable, and only the past is real and reliable. Only those who have a clear conscience and are willing to reflect on their own behavior can face the past with courage. The present is like the sky or the stars, always switching tracks and never waiting for anyone. Mediocre people only care about the short and easy to pass in the present, but cannot stay in the present. As long as things don't come right away, they feel like they are spending years. Unfortunately, the time they have to enjoy themselves is very short, because their hobbies are always shifting and they do not focus on one thing. While enjoying themselves, these people are still troubled by various situations. They are happy, but at the same time they are worried about how much longer can they enjoy their happy moments. The man who is willing to spend time in philosophy is the man who is truly relaxed and knows how to live. My friend Fabianus says that sometimes he feels that it is better to do nothing than to study cold knowledge. Since God has allowed us to befriend people of all times, why don't we get out of the short, empty moment and immerse ourselves in the endless history of our illustrious ancestors? The life of a man who tries so hard to get something and then has to try harder to protect it is a short and sad one. Mediocrity may seem pathetic, but it is most pathetic to be mediocre for the sake of others, to adjust your sleeping schedule and walking pace to match that of others, and to let others dictate even your freedom to love or hate. Therefore, when you see someone wearing an official uniform every day, or being well known in the parliament, you don't have to envy them, because the price they have to pay is too high. On peace of mind. This is Seneca's reply to the letter of Serenus, who felt that his heart was often filled with evil thoughts, envying the glory and wealth of others, and wanting to be involved in public affairs, but was afraid of being too tired to do so, and asked Seneca for help. Whenever a storm comes, even the calmest sea will ripple. You say that you want to have inner peace, but this is the hardest thing in the world. The goal of a calm mind, always self-sufficient, always looking at things with optimism, without over-exuberance or discouragement, is the goal of euthymia, peace of mind. When the human heart is active in nature, it will forget itself for the excitement. The more the heart goes out of the way, the more the person will be happy in it, and will not be able to extricate himself from it, because these people will keep looking for things to be busy, and will bombard themselves with fatigue. Therefore, people begin to wander around, looking around. Even if they are walking along the long coastline, they will enter the sea at one time, and land at another time, in an attempt to appease the restlessness of the heart, to calm the dissatisfaction with the status quo. But what good does it do to be honest with yourself? Isn't it true that the inner mind will keep on pestering people and make them restless? That's right, and that's why we have to realize one thing: it's not the outside world that makes us suffer, it's us. We are too weak to suffer, to enjoy ourselves. or to do anything for ourselves or others. No matter what the situation, we can do our civic duty, whether by word, deed, expression, gesture, by a silent but firm attitude, or even by the mere gesture of walking, we can contribute. Virtue can have an impact even if it is distant or hidden. Wait a minute, you don't think people who can enjoy themselves nobly are worth anything? In fact, the ideal situation is when a person is prevented by fate or governmental prohibition from holding office, and is able to balance leisure and work, because he or she is bound to find a way to do good, and will not be at a loss for a way to do so. Whether we have to stand up for ourselves or go into hiding, we have to do something, and we should not be deterred by fear. The most important thing in life is to recognize the limits of our abilities at all times, because we often overestimate ourselves. Some small things will cause complications. At this time, we should know how to put off the work, do not get entangled in chores. If we want to make friends, we should make friends with people who are not easily swayed by our desires. Bad habits are easily transmitted to each other. You will find that money brings us much more pain than other worries. In the final analysis, the fewer possessions a person wants to keep, the less he or she will suffer. For all human beings, injuries cause the same kind of pain, regardless of a person's size. So there is no doubt that the loss of property hurts for rich and poor alike. It is easier to live without accumulating wealth than to lose it. You will find that those who have never been favored by the goddess of fortune are happier than those who have been abandoned by the goddess. The ideal financial status is to have a little property but not poor, but not rich either. As long as one develops the habit of being careful with one's money, even if many people think it is a shame to be careful, and does not imitate new and superficial things and people, and does not measure the value of things only by their glamorous packaging, one will be able to go from being poor to being rich. Don't spread everything on a large scale, lest you be hurt by the cold arrows of fate. Save energy in the inner circle, is always the right path to choose, and even the most suitable for the literati to buy books behavior should be appropriate to stop. Fighting against bad luck is a sure way to lose, just as a sail can't stop a strong wind. There are always fun moments in every stage of life, but only if you are willing to look down on the evils of the world. People live to suffer, but thanks to God we can get used to everything, and gradually regard misfortune as nothing. Think of those who are dragging their leg transport belts. At first they feel that their legs are heavy and difficult to walk, but after a while, as long as they no longer worry about their leg transport belts, and choose to accept it with an open heart, they can let go of their worries and face it with ease. All men are bound by destiny, but some men have a leg transport belt, and it is made of gold. But then again, what's the difference? May everyone accept his or her destiny and take advantage of the good things in life without complaining. For the wise, servants, property, official positions, their own bodies, and even their own selves are not things that can be owned for a lifetime. They are no different from borrowed things, and they are perfectly willing to return them if the lender wants to claim them back. But they will not belittle themselves, they will perform their personal tasks with respect and care, as if they were taking care of someone else's possessions. Anyone who fears death cannot live as a human being should. If a person understands such a destiny from birth, he will be able to live according to his destiny with a firm will, and no accident will happen to him. All the tragedies that happened to other people could have happened to us. I have always understood that God will bring me to all kinds of chaos, and that death is always at my side. By visualizing the future, we can reduce the discomfort caused by evil, and not be shaken inwardly by it. Don't labor for the unattainable, and don't realize that your expectations are unrealistic only when you get what you want. If we have nothing better to do, it is better to keep silent, for those who are too busy are played by fate. Remember, fate is always there, it just doesn't always stay the same. A wise man is prepared to have his plans thwarted. Don't allow yourself to go back and forth, for this is the most difficult vice to control. If you are stubborn, you will be restless and unhappy, and you will often have to fight with fate, and the more difficult it will be for you to achieve self-discipline. Don't interfere in other people's business, take care of yourself, and don't be dispirited by loss. No matter what difficulties you encounter, keep a positive and optimistic attitude. In the face of the evils of the world, it is better to sneer at them than to grumble at them, for he who can sneer still expects others to improve, but he who grumbles at everything is only mourning for the death of his own heart, and is very unwise. Virtue, however near, is not offensive, and it is better to be laughed at for simplicity than to be burdened with a heavy mask of hypocrisy all the day long. The human heart needs to be relaxed at the right time, just as we do not need to pull up the seedling if the land is fertile enough. If leisure and entertainment were not fun, people would not be interested in them. However, indulgence in recreation can also make the mind wandering and depressed. The man who invented wine was called Liber, because wine helps to relieve, liberate, sadness and makes the heart more free and lively, so that it can go forward in everything. But freedom and drinking should not be unrestrained. If we don't take care of our wavering hearts, we can't keep the peace that passes so quickly by relying on these means alone. Confession to Marcia. Letters of comfort to a bereaved mother. Fate seems as immovable as a mountain, and what can a man do when he mourns? Do not be carried away by the misfortunes of life. Listen with patience, nay, speak of your son as often as you can, so that his name and deeds may be constantly in your ears. Don't make it so painful that you think it a misfortune to seek solace from others. You have forgotten the happy times you spent with your son while he was still alive, all you think of is the scene of her death. No animal but man can indulge in the loss of a child. Human beings have a habit of promoting grief, and the degree of pain is determined by the will of the individual, not by the objective degree of misfortune. The feelings of the present have their origin in the habits of the past. Some things are not terrible, but if we get used to fearing them, we become weak and lose the courage to face them. If we are prepared for them, the shock will be much smaller. In fact, making room in our hearts for grief and forcing ourselves to grieve are two different things. We try to mourn because we think that evil has nothing to do with us. Even after witnessing all kinds of unfortunate events, we still fail to realize that the fate of all human beings is the same, and we think that the path we choose will be stable and smooth. Don't we have enough funeral processions passing outside our homes? But we never take death seriously, we just watch it. Do you want to know how often your fate plays tricks on you? Do you know that the gun that pierces another person's heart will also pass you by? When we are reminded to think about these things, who wouldn't take it as a bad omen and avoid it? Children, positions, wealth, and all sorts of random things that appear to be bright and shiny at first glance are just decorations that have never belonged to us. These things are temporary borrowings from others, not gifts we have been given. In light of this, we must not get too excited and think that everything around us is ours. We have to keep reminding ourselves to appreciate what we have in life as if it is going to disappear or is disappearing. It's like a person who keeps a small animal with all their heart and soul. They can have fun just looking at it, touching and feeling their pet. Even if your son's efforts have not brought you any benefit, you have gained a great deal by having nurtured and cared for him. It is human nature to love only what we have lost. It's not just the old people who are dying. In fact, we are all dying at an early age, at a young age, at a young age, or at any time in our lives. When we die, all the trials and tribulations of our lives end, and we are restored to the peace we had before we were born. There is no good or bad in death, only in things that are physical. The only way to make life longer is to tell ourselves how long we will live. Fate will not take our lives for us. How long each person lives is a matter of destiny. All the words used to describe the stages of life contain an element of death. In adulthood, one loses one's identity as a child. In old age, one's prime is gone. The new stage of life is like the old stage of death. Seneca also advocated living in the present and enjoying the moment. He believes that the past is gone, the future is not yet here, and the only thing we can master is the present. Therefore, we should learn to cherish the present moment and derive happiness and satisfaction from it. Seneca's On the Shortness of Life is an important work on the philosophy of life, and his ideas are still inspiring to us nowadays. The book reminds us to be aware of the finite nature of time and to learn how to adapt to and utilize this fact. It encourages us to choose a meaningful life, to pursue wisdom and happiness, and to build deep relationships with others. I hope this brief introduction will help you to understand Seneca's On the Shortness of Life, an important philosophical work. If you are interested in this topic, I recommend that you read this book to gain a deeper understanding of Seneca's thought.